So welcome everyone to the JB Media Digital Drop-In. I can't believe it's October and we're coming to the end of the year, but I'm excited to share about our topic today, where we're going to talk about basically holiday marketing campaigns. I want to start because I had a few questions as I was getting set up today about, exactly what we're going to talk about and how it applies to everyone, because I think everyone's in a pretty different situation depending on what kind of industry you're in, and especially where your business is at this year. So I do think that, we're going to talk about some generalized things and some strategies, but I want to encourage everyone to really use the chat, or preferably if you can use the Q&A to pop in questions that you have about the work that you're doing and how some of what we're sharing applies to your situation. Because I do know, again, if you're in the B2C world, business to consumer, things are very different than if you're in the B2B world, which is business to business. And there's different ways that we approach the holidays, but I think the one thing that we all can agree on is that we're going into the last quarter of the year. There's a lot of opportunities between October 1st and January 1st to make connections with our customers and potentially to really, basically tap into the values and the things that our customers or our potential customers care about and actually have a big impact this fall. So, even though, like I said, we're going to talk about some retail specific trends and some data that I've put together, I do think that the best practices I'm going to suggest really are applicable in different scenarios. So if it's not clear to you how something might apply to your situation, please feel free to let us know in the Q&A or in the chat, and Justin and I will try to help answer some of those questions today. And once I get finished, we're going to have Justin hop on and share some information that he has as well. So for those of you who are not familiar with JB Media, JB Media Institute is a local digital marketing school and educational program here in Asheville. My name is Sarah, and I'm the lead instructor, and my co-founder and one of our other instructors, Justin Bellamy, is joining me today as well. So if it's your first time on a digital drop-in, thanks so much for joining us. So a few things I just want to talk about in relationship to, like I said, this kind of consumer shopping mindset that's happening as we speak right now. One of the greatest tools that exists, in my opinion, online for free is a website called Think with Google. And if you're interested in understanding the trends in basically behaviors that people are having on the web, and so that's not just shopping, but all sorts of other behaviors as well, Google has been doing a ton of studies this year and providing a huge amount of amazing data on their website, Think with Google. So if you want to know how all the changes of 2020 have been impacting how people behave when they're on their phone, when they're on their desktop or laptop, when they're on their tablet, and even just the way they're approaching purchasing and things like that, definitely you can go to Google and just type in thinkwithgoogle.com, or just type it directly into the browser, and you'll go directly there and get access to a ton of great information. And Kathy, I see your comment that you got to spend some time with Justin on the Holistic Holiday at Home virtual cruise. So yeah, I got to be a part of that as well. That was an excellent virtual event, really, really powerful. So many great speakers. So it's interesting because right now what people are feedbacking to Google about is that about 30% of people who would normally shop on Black Friday say they're not going to do it this year. So I think we're going to see some just interesting things around Black Friday, how that pans out. I think it's just going to have a different flavor in 2020 than it's ever had before. And then 50% of US shoppers are saying that the pandemic is definitely affecting their whole plan for the holidays this year. So in a lot of ways, what we're finding is that we have to kind of adapt to our customers' needs. We really need to be listening to them right now, and we need to be figuring out how we can really show up for them quickly and efficiently for this last quarter of the year. And again, I think this is an easy buy-in from people who are B2C. Those of us who are B2B, though, I think we also have to be thinking about the fact that now we've got this last quarter of the year. This is when a lot of final things are going to come together. lots has changed. I think people are really interested in looking to January to really start putting together a strategy around their B2B business. And so even in the business to business world, I still think there's some opportunities here. And we have to know that people are just being more thoughtful, right? They're being more thoughtful. They're not doing things the way they always have. And they're looking for new things that we may not be aware of if we're not listening. Also in 2019, 78% of US holiday shoppers used three or more channels to do their shopping, and 58% reported that purchases were made online. So already in 2019, we had this high number of people that were shopping online and they were also using multiple channels, right? So they might be using some social media channels, they might be using websites, they might be getting emails and things like that. And so this is actually, I think, just really grown in 2020 even more than we expected. So 75% of the US shoppers this year said they're really focusing online more than ever and that they're going to be browsing not just to buy, but to get ideas, right? And they're going to avoid probably going to the store in person as much. And when they do go to a brick and mortar location, it's going to be really intentional. The in shopping experience, which is that brick and mortar experience I'm talking about, in 2019, there was already a big trend of people going to the internet first, or even carrying their phone with them into a store and searching for things. So, again, everything that's happened this year has now accelerated that trend quite a bit forward. Also, because of everything that's happened, we can see that people are searching a lot more for things that are localized and near them. So 67% of shoppers said they plan to confirm online that something's in stock if they're going to go to a brick and mortar location, and that searches for available near me have grown worldwide by more than 100% since last year. So it's interesting to me, this kind of mixture of, accelerating this trend to shopping online as a companion piece to shopping in person. And now, of course, we're seeing a lot of people opt out of the in-person experience, but then also that we're staying local as much as possible if we can. Right. So people are interested in picking up things. They're interested in buying from local businesses to support their community and things like that. And so 66% of shoppers said they plan to shop more at local small businesses. And essentially, I think right now, what it comes down to is it's a really good time to be connecting with your local community, making sure that your digital presence is really clear about your operation hours, what your policies are right now regarding your staff and things like that. If you have a brick and mortar, what is going on with that physical location? Even myself, again, as a business to business person, I've had a lot of people message me at the end of this year to say, hey, can we meet in person? Can you come in person? And I personally have said no, that I won't come in person. I have my own reasons with my family right now why I'm doing minimal exposure myself to protect family members. And so even though I know things are opening back up, I'd rather pace that part of it out. So I'm being really clear with people what I can provide for the rest of the year, what that looks like, and trying to talk about it right up front in my sales meetings so they're aware of, just where we're at as a company, where I'm at as a professional, especially as a speaker and a teacher. So again, no matter which industry you're in or whether you're B2B or B2C, I think realizing that people are going to make this effort to spend money in their own community is really important. And thinking about how you can connect in with that local community, if it's valuable to you, is going to be, I think, a step that we have to take immediately, like this month, looking at the ways that we can connect over that last quarter of the year. Also, 53% of shoppers said they plan to shop this season in a contactless way. So they really want just almost no contact with other people. If you can imagine, that's about half of the shoppers. That's a lot, a pretty big number. And almost half said they'd really prefer to do, picking up at a store, curbside pickups for things, that sort of stuff. And again, in the B2B world, I think obviously we're seeing virtual events, virtual classes, all these types of things have really moved into Zoom and GoToMeeting and Google Meet. and these other tools that we've gotten available to us. So I think the mindset that we have to just kind of understand, especially nationally in our country, is that people are in different situations, they're in different locations, experiencing different levels of crises. So, especially for those of us that might span outside of our local area when it comes to our products and services, if you're talking to a potential client in California, that is very different than talking to a potential client in, South Carolina versus talking to a potential client that's up in Connecticut. Each of these different areas is having their own unique crisis in 2020 based on whatever's happening there. So I think that just creates a higher level of empathy that's needed to really be thinking from your customer or client's perspective and to just really understand that we're going to have a lot of people making decisions based on their experience, their industry, their family, their personal situation. And so I feel that means that we have to be adaptable going forward. And again, we have to be listening to people to really understand what they want and need. And then 70% of shoppers said they plan to do their shopping earlier to avoid crowds. And 80% of planned shoppers said they're going to consolidate their shopping so that they can do less trips out of the house and to places where there's lots of people. So again, if you are in the product space, if you are even, I think, in anything related to tourism and hospitality, if you're in the food industry, if you're an attraction, if you're any of these types of businesses where you're not just selling a product, but you're selling an experience, I think we want to remember that people are going to be very thoughtful about the experiences that they choose. They're going to do a lot of research ahead of time to understand where you're at as a business and whether or not they feel comfortable trusting you. And then we're also really going to see that they are kind of reducing, again, the amount of exposure they have based on their risk. And so that means they might plan to do certain things all in one day, or maybe they're going to be doing things on days that are not as popular. So, for instance, a lot of times the weekends are more popular days for people to make plans and they're busier typically. We see people doing things during the week right now. And I think as we go in the holidays, we're going to see that happening more as they get together with family, as they get together with friends. They're going to be figuring out how they can avoid, like I said, larger crowds, larger groups of people, the busy times. They're going to be looking for ways to step away from that. So figuring out how you can be available to them is going to be really important. So some of the trends that we're seeing overall, and again, I've done some research on this, but this is also, I just want to be clear, kind of experiential on my end of working with all the different clients and students, and then looking at really the studies that are coming out. So I'm sure there's more we could add to this list, but there's 5 things that I kind of wanted to share that I think are just really important. Not all 5 of them might apply to you, but I think at least 1 or 2 of them will probably apply to something that you're working on. So first, again, if we look at brick and mortar, in-store, curbside pickup, contactless shopping. So if you don't have a clear plan for that over the holidays, you need to make sure it's a very clear plan, that it's structured, that you've got the manpower to handle it, the people aren't going to have to wait too long, that orders aren't going to get confused. You just want to make sure you've got all of that kind of organized and ready to go. So you want a pickup system. You also have to be thinking about the scalability of what you're doing. So to me, it's really important. You don't want to create a system that's so cumbersome that if you get a lot of sales this year, you can't really keep up with it and scale it appropriately leading into the holiday. So think about that. And that's even true of something like Halloween or Thanksgiving. If you're targeting those holidays, make sure you have a system for this in place. And I think if you live in a smaller area, you might consider whether or not delivery options are something you could offer. And there might be fees involved with that and different things. You might have to have a specific person that could help with that, or you may have to have another company that you partner with to do the delivery, but you might just think about what that looks like and whether or not that would open up some opportunities to having more customers. Also, if you have a website, I really think everyone in October, you need to test your website usability. ASAP, in my opinion. As people go into the end of the year again, of course, in the B2C, we've got lots of shopping going on, lots of different holidays people are buying for. But in the B2B world, we also have, again, a lot of people looking at their end of year stats, looking at what they've accomplished in 2020, making plans for the first quarter of 2021, thinking about what needs to change and shift. So, whereas the B2B world is often quieter, I think, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I think we're going to have a lot of people evaluating things during that time and still looking for ways to make plans, to move forward, to continue to adapt to the ever changing situation. And of course, in the middle of all of this, we're going to have the election happening, which I think is going to have a big impact. Regardless of what happens, I think it's going to have a big impact on this entire situation. So I feel like we all just want our websites to be really solid. And one of the easiest and best ways we can improve our website's functioning is through speed testing and making sure that we are as close to 3-second load times as possible. So if you have a web designer, if you have a web developer, you can test your own stuff and then share the reports with them just by sending them a link. And I often run tests on both of these because I want to see the differential, because the tests are for different things. Google is a harsh taskmaster. So when you run your speed tests on Google, you often feel sad afterwards. They're very critical of different things. So you're not necessarily going to get 100 out of 100 or an A plus, but you want to make sure that you're as close to that 3-second mark as possible, especially if you're doing things like social media advertising, if you're doing things like email marketing, where the goal is to get people to click to your website. The number one way that you can lose people is when they click over, your website loads so slowly that it's really not a match to the experience they were just having using their email program on their phone or using Facebook or Instagram. Also, like you saw in the data, local experiences are becoming kind of a hot trend right now in a lot of different places. And I think it's because most of us know our local businesses need support. This has been a rough year. Lots of people have been laid off. Lots of people aren't able to keep their staff at the same numbers as before. And so a lot of people are making this intentional choice to shop local. And that was already a trend again, but we've accelerated that trend a lot. So what are you offering that's unique, that's different? How can you kind of stand out? Again, how can you make that local connection? And I want to encourage everyone to look for partnership opportunities with other small companies, right? So don't be afraid to reach out to other companies, other organizations, other brands in the community, and figure out how you can work together to maybe advertise together and get messages out about what you're doing, to put campaigns together and promote different products or services as a package, right? So think about, not just local products, but local experiences. And how can we give people something really unique and different and help them, celebrate this year, since our celebrations are really not going to be the same way that they've been in the past. And I do think this is a really powerful time to think about what your community really needs, right? How can you be innovative? How can you be creative? How can you figure out different ways to help not just your own business, but your neighborhood, your city, your town? How can you figure out a way to really be a part of the overall shift, the overall support, the overall, if we want to use the word survival of your community? Because I think that's something that as brands move forward, they're talking about more and more. It's been a constant conversation in 2020. Brands are being asked to really take a stand on their values and to put forward what it is that they care about, and to even share kind of how they see themselves impacting the world. So Justin and I have a lot of experience working in the social impact space, with socially conscious businesses. Justin especially has done a ton of that work. I've been interested to see how lots of businesses, whether they consider themselves socially conscious or in that social enterprise arena, a lot of them, though, are moving in that direction, right? They're moving in that direction of just how are we impacting our community? How are we impacting the world? How can we help lift people up? And even Google products added a local filter this year. So when you're searching on Google Shopping, you can actually immediately tweak the filter to show you things that are right in your local area. So they had never done that until this year. So it just shows the value of that. And then for those of you who have a Google My Business listing, put this tool to good use. Make sure that it's all up to date, that you've got accurate information, including the hours. Make sure you're looking at the reviews, responding to the reviews. If you have photos and videos from this year, share them on your Google My Business listing. But most of all, use the posting feature if you can. So if you have sales, deals, events coming up, whether they're in person or virtual, if you have blogs that you're putting out around what you're doing over the next few months, post them to Google My Business. So Trinity, I see your question. Google My Business, you can actually just Google it. It'll take you right to the Google My Business website. You can sign in with any Google account or Gmail that you already have. And from there, you're going to try to claim your business listing. That's where you would put in the name of the business and see if it comes up. Sometimes if you have a physical address, you can put in the physical address and that will bring up the listing. Very often, Google has already scraped something about a business if it already exists. So they have you kind of in their database, you just haven't claimed the listing. If you're truly a startup, then you're really just going to want to actually create the listing from scratch. And then from there, they send you a postcard with 4 digits on it, usually in about 2 weeks. Although let's be real, the post office is it's stressful right now. So it might take a little longer than that, but you'll get a kind of boring looking white postcard with 4-digit number. You enter that into your account and then it's verified. And from there, you have full use of the tools. And your Google My Business listing is typically what shows up, especially on mobile devices when people search on Google and other apps. So those local listings pop directly up. And if you have a physical address that you don't want to share, let's say you're working from home, you don't have an office that you want to put out there, you can actually put a service area instead of the physical address. So you can say that you service a certain amount of miles around your location and so forth. So you can adjust it based on your situation. But again, you can just Google My Business. It'll take you right there. And don't feel like you have to make another Google account. Just use whatever one you already use for your work. And then, of course, we're seeing a ton of positive energy around really strategizing your social media and your email marketing together. So I hope that everyone, as we've looked at the poll, we can see there's a number of people that definitely have yes, or kind of a plan for the last quarter. It's a little over 50%, but almost 40% of you really don't have a plan for the last quarter. So one of the things that you could start with as a first step is thinking about your messaging pace for the next 2 to 3 months. And I always include a little bit into January because after the Christmas and New Year's, even that week, there's tons of opportunities to connect with people, especially if you're B2C. B2C. B2B, those of us who are business to business, that week between Christmas and New Year's is sometimes pretty quiet, but business to consumer, people actually do still buy right after the holidays and going into January. They still donate as well. So I think, mid-January, we can look at that swath of time and figure out how are we pacing things? How frequently are we posting? What are we posting? How frequently are we emailing? How are we cross-pollinating different pieces of content on social media and in our emails? You may even be considering upping the amount of emails you send over the holidays, but you don't want to send them all the same week, right? You want to spread it out over a little bit of time. So that's why it's great to be thinking about this right now at the beginning of October. And really think about what are you promoting and why. If you're giving back, if you're donating, if you're going to support some causes or charities, how can that be wrapped into the conversation? Again, to share the values and also maybe to partner with some of those organizations that you want to support. Create a whole holiday content calendar for October, November, December, and the beginning of January. And if you're running ad campaigns, I would suggest that your organic social media and your email kind of also be unified with whatever advertising push you're doing. So I've put together a list when you get these slides along with the recording. I've put together some links and some examples of things that I think are great campaigns. One business to business campaign that I really liked reading about is this company, Zeti. They're just a resume builder system. It's a pretty simple program. But their CEO and co founder, they decided to put together last year a Christmas themed career guide. And that's now something they're looking at putting out in 2020, which I think is very smart. And so, from a business to business perspective, I just want people who are selling services and maybe not doing that direct consumer selling to realize in this last quarter, we still have a chance to create content that's really useful, to really show up for people and provide something interesting. And this career guide did a great job of attracting people to their system, to their website to learn about what they do, also help them build an email list, which was really strong. And I think, like I said, they did that last year, and now it's even more relevant now. And then if you want to dig into some examples for holiday campaigns that have gone on in 2020, I shared a couple links to the Digital Agency Network where they kind of break down different larger companies, what type of digital marketing they're doing. They share a lot of videos from those different campaigns, and they're really, really fascinating. So I just wanted you to be able to see in 2020, what exactly are people doing? So I'm going to go ahead and stop my sharing because I want Justin to be able to take over. But I want to open up if there's any questions. Like I said, any thoughts about how these things might apply to you, or if you're planning something from for the holidays and you're not sure about it, feel free to chat it in or drop it into the Q&A. And I'm glad to sort of discuss those things. And I'll give everybody just a minute to type because I know sometimes you're typing things out. All right, so I'm going to assume there's no questions for now. All right, so if we don't have questions, I am going to share just a couple of these examples, and Justin will hop on in just a moment. Let me just go back here. Trinity, yes, everyone always gets a copy of the slides and the slides and the recording. So you'll definitely have access to those. All right, great. So just to show you kind of the list here, this first link is basically going to share essentially ad campaigns that I think are more holiday focused around sort of Christmas campaigns and things like that. So the Digital Agency Network does a great job of putting together lots of different reviews of different campaigns. I love to keep track of them because it gives me a lot of great inspiration. A lot of times I'm working on campaign ideas myself. And so just looking at some of the stuff, watching what people do, checking out their social media is really helpful. But this is specifically around this kind of new normal idea that we're going into. And so you'll see this list of companies, everything from Burger King to Heineken to Starbucks to Adidas. And again, they share a lot of the video content and then give you a breakdown of the campaign. But some of them I really liked, like Heineken's Back to the Bars campaign as things are reopening. And a lot of them are really relevant. Of course, if you're a fan of Budweiser's Horse and Their Puppy, they've got out a reunited campaign with a commercial featuring those guys, which I think is really positive. So yeah, those are just some things that you can check out, like I said, to really get your creative juices flowing. And then Sumaya, yeah, holiday giveaway contest. That is a great idea if you have the ability to do that. Definitely right now, if you looked at the trends, a lot of people are talking about not just giving away things, but again, really putting together sort of contest packages with other partners. So again, multiple businesses will come together to create an experience or to create a mixture of kind of products and services. So that's another part of the trend that we see really blossoming right now. And I think with contests, keep in mind, it's really important to have a focus on like, what is the goal of the contest? Is it to collect emails? Is it to get followers on Instagram? Is it to get people to the website? Exactly what are the goals? Because you'll find that contests, they can really be created in so many different ways. So, I think the kind of beginning step of a contest is really thinking about, okay, what do we think people want? What could we give them that would be really valuable? The next thought is really, okay, how can we turn this into something that we feel is going to be a tangible win for us too, right? So, like I said, really quantifying that success, because how you set up the contest or the tools that you choose will, I think, be directly related to what you're defining as the success of the contest. Like I said, which would be building the email list, growing the social media following, or driving website traffic, or some combination of those things. And then, David, I see your question. I'm wondering if you, and you can feel free to unmute, when you're asking about Google ad campaigns, do you have something more specific that you want to ask, or are you just curious about them in general? And let me know if you can't. Let me see if I can allow you to talk if you'd like to. I think I just invited you if you want to ask a question.
Hey, Sarah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Just in general, how to put together a effective campaign, budgeting, posting, just the kind of a quick overview of the different aspects.
So just the different aspects of Google Ads?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, Google Ads is a pretty complex system, so it's kind of hard to just like know what what aspects will matter to you, because it's a pretty deep system. So, there's lots of different types of ads that we can do on Google, whether it's display ads, search ads, video ads. So each one of those kind of buckets of different types of ads is going to have different things that you should pay attention to. What most people are familiar with is the text ads, which is the search ads, where it's pretty much just the text and they show up on different parts of the internet, including Google, but also its network of sites. And I think, the basics of Google Ads is really to think about who do you want to market to, because they've advanced their audience builder to have a lot more options. So, there's a lot more that you can do with remarketing. If you have a good website with like over 1,000 visitors a month or 2,000 visitors a month, there's a lot of different things that you can do just in building the audiences, because they've added more. It's not just the old school demographics anymore. They've added a lot more interests, behaviors, things like that to be more similar to what we see on social media advertising platforms. So a lot of times we really start in that audience place, right? Who do we really want to target? And, why are they going to be interested in what we're offering? How can we really think about what the value or benefit is for them and work that into the content? I think the other part of Google Ads is keyword research, really spending time in their Google Keyword Planner and understanding what people type in relationship to the products and services that you offer. And I think the third thing is you have to have a really good website. Google Ads, in a lot of ways, are dependent on that click through of people being able to click over to your website and complete something, right? Become a lead, become a customer. So to me, the landing page that you create for your ad campaigns on Google has to not only be relevant, which means it has to share the same keywords. It has to be an exact match to what your ad says. So whatever you say in your ad, when they click over to that page has to reflect exactly what that ad claims, or Google's going to give you a poor quality score. And so you really have to spend time on the content of that page, but then you also want to spend some time on the functionality. So is it loading fast? Is the call to action clear? I'll often do some testing on landing pages I use with Google Ads to try to understand what's working and not working. So that's something, those I think are the three key main things. And then with Google Ads, it really is important. You're going to need some time to learn it. So one of the hard things that I think, people struggle with is if they're jumping in on it now for the last quarter, it can be stressful, because to learn the whole Google Ads system is going to be a lot to do that quickly. They do have smart campaigns in Google Ads. I don't personally feel smart campaigns always work as well as learning the full Google Ads campaign experience. So there is something called smart campaigns, which shortens the process and things like that. But to me, it doesn't give you the control that you need over the audience builder to really target the right people. So I hope that's helpful, David, just kind of some
Yes.
basics. And then Jenny was mentioning she's learned a lot from the Google Digital Garage. So thank you for adding that, Jenny. That's a really great idea. So one thing I will give Google is they do give us a lot of resources to learn stuff. And the Google Digital Garage is really helpful with a lot of different information, and then just their whole kind of help system. There's a lot of different things for Google Ads that you'll find directly on Google's website explaining how things work. And then Stephanie, I see your question. How do you find out your Google ad quality score? Is that in the campaign itself? So yeah, that's built right in directly to Google. And so essentially as you're doing your campaigns, if the keywords you've chosen for your ad don't really match the landing page, the Google ad system is kind of going to flag you and say, hey, we feel like there's a disconnect here. We want to make sure when people click on the results that they, or click on the ad, that they get the results they expected, they get the information they expected. So, hey, Justin, did you want to go ahead and take over and talk a little bit about your experience with the agency and how you guys are looking at Q4?
Yeah, absolutely. I put together a PowerPoint. I want to be transparent. I actually found this to be one of the most difficult webinar PowerPoints I've ever put together. I just had a real hard time kind of separating our experience, what we've done from like the broader context of B2B in seasonality and the holidays. So I just sort of came up with what I've observed and some of the things I've learned, and also some of the things I've seen other companies do, especially related to the holidays and Q4 of the calendar year. So I'll share my screen. I will go ahead and tell people that there's quite a bit of text in my presentation. It's only about 6 or 7 slides. I'll go through it reasonably quickly, and then we'll have time for a few questions. I know we only have about 12 minutes left, but I also have one video that I want to show as well. Sarah, can you either make me a co-host or allow me to share my screen? You're muted, but.
All right, sorry, hold on, because I'd already made you a panelist, so I'm not sure why it's given it to you. I think that switched it over.
Here we go.
Great, thanks. Sorry about that.
All righty. I thought I had this thing open. Here we go. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen, Sarah? All right, great. So I'm Justin Bellamy, the founder of JB Media Group, co-founder of the Institute with Sarah, and now the publisher and CEO of romanticasheville.com. So I'm going to be focusing on B2B strategies for the end of the year, both related specifically to the holidays, but also just this time of year. I'm going to cover kind of the seasonality of budgets and decision cycles, some strategies that I've seen work, kind of how to think about campaigns this time of year for B2B, and some examples. So within the seasonality and buying cycles, you know, we're in a professional services industry mostly. You know, my core business being JB Media Group, we provide marketing services. So marketing specifically, over the last 10 years, I've noticed some specific cycles. And I've noticed that for businesses that have a January 1st budget cycle or fiscal year, they're doing two different things kind of in parallel in the fourth quarter. They are trying to wrap up and show results for things that they started back in January. They're trying to make sure they have some momentum coming out of the end of the year and to like maybe make up for some slower time they had during the summer when people were off work and maybe they didn't get quite as much done as they had hoped. And then they're also oftentimes planning out what they want to accomplish in the next year, coming up with their budgets, coming up with maybe vendors they want to use for different things. And that can create what I have experienced as a very hectic sales experience in the fourth quarter. Before I hired my first salesperson a couple of years, about 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, the fourth quarter was often when I was the most overwhelmed with a combination of people wanting to do things immediately and things like people talking about big projects that were kind of complicated to quote for next year. And a lot of those, a good portion of those didn't pan out. Maybe because I was too busy to really give them the attention they need, or people are just thinking really big and they end up doing something different. So that created a lot of pressure. So, I wasn't sure how this fourth quarter would play out, and we're just getting into it, but it's not a typical year because of the pandemic. But so far, I'm seeing a very similar pattern. I was worried about the business in August, as I usually am, because leads tend to dry up that time of year, and kids are going back to school. People are doing their last minute travel for the summer, which still happened again this year. The whole going back to school remotely thing made it even more stressful for a lot of families who also have parents who are working and trying to figure out how to keep their work going. But now we're seeing a combination of things. We're seeing firms getting a surge of work, looking to outsource stuff to us. So some big projects have come through in the last week of overflow work for other companies. We've seen the typical end of year rush of small projects and like capacity support needs for current and new clients, and quite a few 2021 larger project scopes of work coming together as well. So that's we're seeing pretty much a normal cycle so far, and that's we're also seeing some businesses have kind of settled on what they want to do differently after with the pivot within the pandemic, kind of some of the ideas that Sarah might have been talking about. And now they're ready to market that. And they're looking for outside help because largely they're realizing they need to do more digital marketing than they were doing before. And we're a vendor who can provide that. So for our specific business, we're seeing more prospects than I anticipated in the fourth quarter, which is great for us. I mean, it's definitely taking a little bit of the stress I was having a month or two ago off. That I feel like we have enough of a pipeline to get out of a hole. We are, as a company, in a hole because we lost a lot of our large clients that were in tourism and event industries. Now, not all businesses run on a January 1 fiscal year. We work in tourism with destination marketing organizations, which is what DMOs stand for. We work for some government clients. And most of the government clients, DMOs, and some nonprofits run on a July 1st fiscal year. And we see a similar sales pattern with those businesses in June and July, where they're trying to wrap up budget and maybe have some extra money to spend in June, and then they're trying to start bigger projects in July. And that's kind of nice for us to have that balance where we don't have all of these kinds of two different kinds of projects happening at January around the holidays. We also get some of that boost of work in June and July, which balances out our annual revenue a little bit. What I have noticed that makes this time of year difficult is between a surge in short-term projects and a surge in sales for longer-term projects, it can be hard to have enough capacity to handle all those sales opportunities at the same time and decide which ones are worth pursuing, pursue the right ones with the right amount of effort, and also to execute other marketing things for ourselves because the sales team is busy, the implementation team is busy, and I sort of sit on both teams. I help run the sales, I help run our strategy work and our implementation. So I find myself often feeling spread really thin, and like my salesperson who is full-time is spread really thin this time of year, which means executing anything extra can be really hard. So here are some strategies, both to overcome those things I just mentioned, but also to make sure you're prepared for this time of year strategically as a business-to-business company. And this mostly relates to service businesses that offer services to other companies. It's probably a little bit less relevant to businesses that offer products to companies, but I'm sure there's some overlap as well. So for sales, make sure you have the capacity to handle those short-term and long-term client needs. And, for us, we're not really flexing our capacity so much as I'm just trying to make sure I carve out more time to help this time of year. So I'm more available for sales. I'm planning on shifting my energy to focus on JB Media sales efforts. I have 3 different companies. I can rotate my time focus between the 3 as far as sales is concerned. I'm just rolling off of a month where I was focusing on Romantic Asheville sales, and I'm moving to focusing on JB Media Group agency sales for the next month or 2, and then shifting over to probably the institute for our tourism event we're doing in March. So another thing is products and services that align with your client's needs. And I'll talk a little bit more about an example of that specifically later on in the presentation. Also, make sure you're selling the right things. And that can mean, don't sell complex long-term projects to clients that need something quick this quarter, and don't sell something too simple and quick to people who are planning on a full year of work next year. And that can be a tough balancing act I've noticed it's been a tough balancing act for us with this time of year. Another thing that's important is this is a good time of year to reconnect with your past clients, your prospects that didn't come through this time last year. All other kind of leads that you have and people who are following you on social and email, because you never know who might be considering something new that you can help with this time of year. This kind of gets back to what I was saying before, is if you're really busy, it can be difficult to do that. So what I'm actually going to be doing is taking a week in about 3 weeks and clearing my schedule and focusing the whole week on outreach, reaching out to partners, reaching out to past clients, setting up meetings, so I can make sure I don't miss this seasonal opportunity that comes up this time of year. So this is a good time of year to be rolling out case studies of things that worked well, especially if you're offering new services or new products. We're working on some case studies, what's been most effective for our clients this year. We just finished one, we're working on a few more. In the past, we've launched a small strategic services this time of year that can be repeatedly sold and kind of templatized for our strategy team, so we can do a lot of them quickly, and that can be helpful. I'm going to be working on a webinar late in this quarter that'll be focusing on one of the things that we think is working really well for our clients, the product service that we offer. And then I want to show this example real quick. Can y'all see the video screen, Sarah? Okay, cool. This is just about a minute, so hopefully this isn't too much time. But this is an example of a creative holiday brand building campaign that one of our former clients did a couple years ago, and it did really well. So Van Winkle, they obviously invested a lot of money in this project. They invested in the design of this really dynamic holiday card. They invested in printing several hundred of them for their clients and contacts. They invested in this $5,000 to $6,000 video. But the video on a smaller scale went viral. It got only 10,000 views, but for a business-to-business kind of seasonal video, that's really strong. And a lot of people saw it. And you might say this doesn't really talk that much about what they do, but it does build awareness for the firm. It does build top of mind name recognition, which for a law firm or a professional services company is really a great outcome for something this time of year. Often why you would invest in sending a holiday card in the first place. So I know we are out of time, but I had a couple more slides. I'll keep going, and it'll take me probably a minute or two to finish up, and then we can see if there's any questions. I can hang out for a few more minutes. But some examples and what we're doing now. So I mentioned the snackable services. A few years ago, we launched a product called the Strategy Sprint. It was kind of a modular strategy project that would be between 10 and 20 hours per project, and allowed us to sell a lot of those quickly and get a few new clients in the fourth quarter to bring in some extra revenue without pitching like our larger strategy projects, which are like usually 40 to 60 hours each. I'm working on a webinar that I'm actually going to debut on our free webinar in December, which I'm really excited about. We'll be partnering with one of our tools that we use, and one of their co-founders of the tool will be joining the webinar, and I'll have 2 other staff members doing a case study and a live example and doing hands-on training. And this tool is one that we pay for. We pay about $400 a month for it. And we think it's a great tool for content strategy, but we also think it's really powerful what it can do. But you need to understand the strategic decisions around that that type of work. So we also hope that it'll generate some leads for us to use the tool for our clients. And then I mentioned this before, but I'm going to take a week off of meetings. So basically clear my meeting schedule, which can often be 30, 35 meetings a week, and focus only on sales meetings, sales partnership meetings around agency sales in about 3 weeks. So I think this is the end of my presentation, I believe. Yeah, so that's what I have. And we're just a couple minutes over, but we can go for a few minutes of Q&A if there's any questions. I hope people found that useful. I know it was a little bit of a hodgepodge of different information.
Great. Thank you so much, Justin. I really appreciate that B2B perspective, because I do think that, it is a little bit different depending on which part of business you're working in. But I do think that, as you expressed, Q4 has got some interesting opportunities. And I'm excited to see you just sharing that some things are staying the same, even though lots of other things aren't. So I know I've asked everybody to drop any questions into the Q&A, but it looks like we are good to go. Please make sure to join us for our next digital drop-in on November 4th. Justin and I will be sharing what we've learned in 2020 about producing virtual events. So we hope that you'll join us then. And then, of course, you can always reach out to me personally. And yeah, thanks for the comments. I appreciate it. I'm really glad everybody found this useful. But like I said, I hope that you'll join us again. And we will be sending you the recording and the slide decks by tomorrow. If you have any other questions about what we talked about today, please feel free, like I said, to email me directly. You can see my email there. But thanks so much for joining us. And we hope to see you at another digital drop-in in the near future. And we also wish everybody luck with their holiday campaigns. So have a great day.